Kim Dae-hyun sits in his office. He's not working. He's listening to the silence of his home. It's his habit. The silence here is a precise instrument. It tells him more than the words of his subordinates. A click, quiet, metallic. The grandfather clock in the hallway striking 9. The sound is clear, without echo. That means all the doors are closed. The windows are sealed. Everything is as it should be. Dae-hyun looks at his computer monitor. 3 windows with cameras are displayed. The hallway, the main entrance, the office. His own image from the camera in the corner of the room looks calm. He studies it. His posture is relaxed, but not slouched. His hands are resting on the desk. Perfect control. Even alone, his gaze slides to the cell window in the second-floor hallway. It's empty. A deep shadow falls between the lamps. Myeon's room door is closed. The office door is closed. Everything is static, but his fingers stop lying still. The index finger of his right hand begins to tap slowly on the table. 1, 2, pause, 3. This isn't a nervous tick. This is a test. He's listening not to the sound, but to the rhythm. The rhythm should be perfect, like the ticking of a clock. But now it's off. He knows every sound in this house. He knows that in 5 minutes, the maid will finish in the kitchen and go to her room in the left wing. He knows that the guard at the gate will make his rounds at precisely 9:10 p.m. But now, in the space between the familiar sounds, there's a void. Not the void there should be, but a different one. As if someone has frozen and isn't breathing. Dae-hyun leans back in his chair. He stares at the ceiling. His face is expressionless. But inside, everything tenses. His mind, tuned to detect threats, has already received a signal. There is a threat. It's not on the screen. It's in the pattern disruption. The quiet evening is no longer quiet. It has become anticipation. Myeon opens the door. She steps out into the hallway. The light from her room falls on the dark parquet floor in a narrow strip, which immediately goes out when the door closes. She stands for a second, letting her eyes adjust. The hallway is long. To the right are windows opening onto the black sky. To the left are doors. Her room, the guest room, the dressing room, and at the very end is her father's office. She walks toward the stairs. She needs water. Her steps are silent in her thick socks. She passes the walk-in closet. And then it's not the sound that stops her, but the lack of it. There's a background hum in the house, the ventilation system, the distant hum of the refrigerator. Now that hum hasn't changed, but something drowns it out for a second. As if a large bird had silently flapped its wings in the next room. Myeon freezes. She doesn't turn her head. She stares straight ahead, but her attention is focused left, toward the end of the corridor. Her peripheral vision catches movement. Vague. A shadow crossing another shadow. She slowly, very slowly turns her head. 5 meters from the office, in the space between 2 lamps, stands a man. He looks at the door. He doesn't move. He looks like a statue. Myeon recognizes the back. Broad shoulders, short hair, dark jacket. Lee Sung-hoon, Uncle Sung-hoon. The one who brought her birthday presents, who always smiled at her with a gentle, almost fatherly smile. But now he's not smiling. His back is tense. He's not just standing there. He's assessing. He's like a hunter about to spring. Myeon stops breathing. She instinctively presses herself against the wall, making herself narrower, smaller. Her heart starts pounding somewhere in her temples, loudly and stupidly. Sung-hoon turns his head. He looks straight down the hallway. His gaze slides past Myeon, into the darkness by the stairs. He doesn't see her. His face seems alien in the semi-darkness. The features are the same, but the expression is focused, sharp, devoid of all the usual softness. He turns back to the office door and takes a step. Sung-hoon approaches the door. He doesn't knock. He places his hand on the brass handle. His movement is confident, without hesitation. Myeon sees his fingers grip the cold metal. She sees his shoulder lean forward as he presses the handle. The rule, the ironclad rule that even the cleaning lady knows. The office door is closed, always. If father is inside, he will open it. If father is not, do not open the door. Never. Under any circumstances. This is the law of the house. It's the first thing they explain to new people. Lee Sung-hoon doesn't just know this law, he's its guarantor. He's personally punished those who violated it. And now he is violating it. The door opens silently, on heavy, well-oiled hinges. He doesn't swing it wide. He opens it just enough to slip inside. His body disappears through the crack. And immediately, almost simultaneously, the door closes. There is a click. Quiet, neat, final. This sound cuts Myeon off from the last second, from her past life, where Uncle Sung-hoon was a loyal man. Now he is a man who broke the cardinal law, who did it quietly and quickly, when he thought no one was watching. A chain of thoughts, cold and clear, instantly flashes through Myeon's mind. Father is not in the office. He is downstairs. Sung-hoon knows this, so he didn't go there for a meeting. He entered secretly. He has a reason to hide it. And the last, most important thought, father must know about this. Now, fear gives way to action. She doesn't scream. She doesn't run to the office door. She turns and runs to the stairs. Her feet carry her down the dark wood steps. She must find her father. She must tell him. Every movement she makes now is a response to that quiet click of the lock. She is the only witness, and she must report. Sung-hoon doesn't just close the door. He puts it back in place. Myeon sees this from the landing, where she retreated in horror. His hand, resting on the inside of the door, doesn't push it sharply. It guides. With a smooth, almost caring movement, he pulls the heavy panel until the frame and panel meet in a perfect line. Only then does he release the handle. His eyes held not contemplation, but a statement. The stage has been accomplished. That look, that gesture, careful, professional, devoid of any haste or hesitation, says more about Myeon than if he were running or looking around like a thief. This isn't a mistake, not a momentary weakness. This is a planned action. A man who has just broken the cardinal taboo behaves as if he's just completed an important, difficult task and done it well. This moment, the precise movement, the cold satisfaction on a familiar face, froze her in utter horror. It was worse than a scream, worse than a threat. It was quiet proof that the world had turned upside down, and she was the only one who saw it. The ice that had formed in her chest at the sight of this gesture suddenly melts, turning into a surge of pure adrenaline. There are no thoughts. There is only an impulse, ancient and irrefutable. Prevent your own. Her feet move without her even thinking. She pushes off the stair railing, turns, and runs down. She doesn't walk. She doesn't sneak. She runs. Her soft toes glide along the polished wood of the steps, and she grabs the railing to keep her balance as she turns. Her breathing becomes loud and harsh in her ears, drowning out the ticking of the clock. She flies past the mirror in the hallway, catching a glimpse of a distorted, pale face with huge eyes. She doesn't look at the camera hanging on the ceiling. Her entire world has narrowed to one task, finding her father. She knows where he is. The wine cellar, the basement. He said he'd pick out a bottle for dinner. She bursts into the dark hallway leading to the service areas and grabs the handle of the heavy oak door with all her might. It doesn't give way immediately. For a moment, panic grips her. What if he's not there? What if Sung-hoon had calculated things differently? She pushes the door hard with her shoulder. The door swings open, hitting the stop. The bright, cold light from the spotlights illuminating the shelves of bottles hurts the eyes. In the center of the small room, his back to the door, stands Dae-hyun. He holds a bottle of Bordeaux in his hands, studying the label. He turns at the noise. His face is calm. Only his eyebrows are slightly raised in surprise. Myeon! What's happened? Dad! Her voice is hoarse, breaking. She catches her breath. To your office! Sung-hoon! Her words are jumbled. She gulps and blurts out the most important thing, squeezing a clear command out of her panic. Look at the cameras! Now! They came into the office. You weren't there, but he came in and closed the door. She watches the last hint of distraction fade from her father's face. His features don't distort with anger or surprise. They simply change density, become harder, heavier. His gaze, which a moment ago had been absent-mindedly glancing at the label, now focuses on her with such intensity that it seems to her he's scanning not only her words, but every muscle in her face, the pulse rate in her neck. He silently places the bottle on the nearest shelf. The movement is precise, economical. He doesn't ask, "Are you sure?" He doesn't say, "It can't be." He accepts the information as fact, as a report. "Show me," he says in one word. His voice is quiet, but there is no softness in it. It is a voice that has switched to another mode. He passes her into the hallway, and she runs after him. Now behind him, he moves quickly, but without fuss. His footsteps echo across the marble floor of the basement with a crisp, quick thud. They climb the stairs. He doesn't look at her, doesn't ask questions. He's already working. Entering the hall, he turns not into his office, but into a small room behind the stairs, the hairdressing room, where monitors display a column of images from all the cameras. He sits down in front of the screens, his fingers already on the keyboard. When? He asks, not taking his eyes off the screens, where empty corridors and rooms stand frozen. 2 minutes ago, maybe 3, she breathes, standing in the doorway and clutching the frame to keep her hands from shaking. He calls up the archive, rewinds, finds the right camera in the second-floor corridor, presses play. On the screen, an empty hallway. Then she enters the frame, exits the room, and freezes. Then he appears. Sung-hoon. They both watch as the figure on the screen approaches the door, looks back, and disappears behind it. The recording is silent, but they both seem to hear the click of the lock. Dae-hyun doesn't move. He stares at the frozen image of the closed door. His face on the monitor is illuminated by a cold blue light. There's no anger or disappointment in his eyes, only absolute, chilling clarity. The verdict has just been passed, and he saw it with his own eyes. The blue light from the monitors casts icy reflections across Kim Dae-hyun's face. He stares at a frozen frame of his office's closed door. The time on the recording reads 9:07 p.m. Just 7 minutes ago. He doesn't say a word. He doesn't move. Only his eyes, always so readable to his daughter, sometimes tired, sometimes warm, now turn into chunks of dark obsidian. There's no flash of anger in them, not a hint of confusion. He steps out hairdresser and stops in the shadows by the stairs, from where he can see both the second-floor corridor and the door to his office at the end. He doesn't go up. He watches. He waits. 4 minutes pass. The office door opens. Lee Sung-hoon steps out. His movements are calm, natural. He doesn't look back, doesn't check the hallway. He simply walks out and closes the door behind him, this time with a casual movement, like a man who has finished his business. He adjusts the cuff of his jacket and heads for the stairs, to where Dae-hyun stands in the shadows. Dae-hyun takes a step forward. The light from the hall falls on him. "Sung-hoon," he says in an even tone. The assistant flinches slightly, like a man lost in thought. His face instantly assumes the familiar mask of respectful attention. "Boss, were you looking for me? What were you doing in my office?" The question is blunt, without preamble. Dae-hyun's eyes are glued to his face. Sung-hoon blinks. He looks slightly confused, but not guilty. "Oh, that. I remembered I left a folder with the cargo reports at the port there. I picked it up. You did let me use the office for work documents," he says, making a slight gesture with his hand, as if dismissing a trifle. "I knocked, but you apparently didn't hear. I assumed you didn't mind, since the door wasn't locked." The explanation is logical. Smooth. Dae-hyun did have a period when he allowed Sung-hoon to work in the office in his absence, but that was 6 months ago. The rule has since become stricter. Dae-hyun doesn't argue. He just watches. "A folder with reports," he repeats without emotion. "Yes, blue. I put it in my briefcase. Should I check?" "No need. Go and rest." Sung-hoon nods, bowing his head respectfully again. "Good night, boss. Good night, Myeon," he adds, noticing her at the door of the hairdressing room. He goes down to the hall and goes to his room in the left wing. His steps are confident. There is no rush. As soon as he's out of sight, Dae-hyun returns to the monitors. He doesn't check the camera in the office. It's not there for security reasons. He searches other angles. The camera in the second-floor hallway only shows a portion of the area near the door. He rewinds the footage. The footage shows Sung-hoon approaching the door. But at the crucial moment, as his hand reaches for the handle, he takes a half step to the left and out of the lens's field of view. It's as if he knows her blind spot. The door opens and closes just beyond the edge of the frame. It was impossible to see whether he knocked. His face was not visible at the moment of entry. Blind spot. Coincidence? Or knowledge? Dae-hyun pushes away from the table. He looks at Myeon. She's still tense, her fingers gripping the doorframe. "Did you see him open the door? Did he knock?" the father asks. She shakes her head silently. "No. He listened and immediately opened it." Dae-hyun nods slowly. An explanation that was too simple had been met with a camera that was too precise. His daughter's quiet warning turned into a loud, clear alarm. The game had begun. And he hadn't even known he was on the playing field, until now. Dae-hyun nods in response to Sung-hoon's parting words. His face is a neutral mask, but in the eyes that briefly meet his assistant's gaze, there's not a drop of the warmth they once had, not even the usual business-like detachment. There's ice there, absolute, impenetrable. He watches silently as Sung-hoon descends the stairs and disappears into the east wing. His own breathing is even, calm. He doesn't move until the sound of his footsteps fades completely. Only then does he slowly turn to Myeon, still standing in the doorway of the hairdressing room. He looks at her, and a shift occurs in his gaze. The ice cracks, but underneath it, there is no warmth. Steel. Deep, cold concentration. He approaches her. He places his hand on her shoulder. His touch is firm, but not heavy. "Good for you for saying that," he says quietly. "Now go to your room. Lock the door. Don't talk about this with anyone. At all." His voice leaves no room for questions. Myeon nods, swallowing the lump in her throat. She sees in his eyes not gratitude, but assessment. An assessment of the new reality in which his daughter has become a source of critical information. He lets go of her shoulder, and she walks toward the stairs, feeling his gaze on her back. Dae-hyun returns to the hairdressing room and closes the door. He sits down in front of the monitors, but doesn't look at them. He stares into space in front of him. Cold, clear logic works in his head. Fact. Sung-hoon entered the office secretly. Fact. He knew about the camera's blind spot, or he was incredibly lucky. Fact. He gave a smooth, plausible explanation. Conclusion? It's not a mistake. It's an act. A deliberate one. But what kind? Theft? Nonsense. Sung-hoon already has access to all the information, except perhaps a few of the most secret safes. Sabotage? Possibly. But what could he possibly have accomplished in a few minutes? Dae-hyun closes his eyes. He sees his office in his mind. Every inch. The desk. The bookshelves. The ventilation grill. The lamp. The electrical outlets. His eyes snap open. He won't touch anything. He won't search. Any action he takes now could play into the hands of someone who's up to something. He must watch. But he's too visible a figure. His attention will be immediately immediately apparent. He needs different eyes. An hour later, the house is silent as night falls. All lights except the emergency ones are out. Daehyun knocks softly on Myeon's door. He enters. She's sitting on the bed, hugging her knees, looking out the window. She's awake. He sits on the edge of the chair by her vanity, not on the bed, keeping his distance. This won't be a fatherly conversation. This will be a business meeting. You did everything right today, he begins. His voice is quieter than usual. Sung-hoon did something unacceptable. His explanation is a lie. Mi-yeon looks at him, her eyes wide. She hears not anger in his words, but rather a statement. This frightens her even more. What did he do? She asks in a whisper. I don't know. But I'll find out, and for that, I need your help. She freezes. She never helped him in his affairs. She was protected from this world. I can't keep an eye on him myself, Daehyun continues. He'll sense something's wrong. You're just a girl to him. You're above suspicion. I need you to be my eyes where I can't see. He pauses, letting her know the seriousness of his request. It won't be dangerous, just observation. You must watch. Remember, tell me, nothing more. Myeon is silent. She looks at her father's hands, folded before him. She sees the thin scar on his knuckle, something she'd never asked about. She suddenly understands with terrifying clarity the world beyond the walls of her room, her father's world, is not just business. It's a place where people enter offices without knocking and lie to your face. And her father, the most powerful man in her universe, asks her for help because he has no one else to trust. Fear recedes, replaced by a strange, chilling sense of responsibility and determination. Okay, she says. Her voice is quiet but clear. What should I do? Daehyun nods almost imperceptibly. Something like respect flickers in his eyes, and a slight caustic bitterness at having to drag her into this. Tomorrow, he says. All day. Act as usual, but watch where he goes after talking to me. Who he calls when he thinks no one can hear him. Don't get too close. Don't try to hear the words. Just remember the places, the times, the people. In the evening, you can tell me everything. He stands up. Sleep now. Tomorrow you'll need a clear head and calm nerves. And remember, he mustn't suspect a thing. You're just a daughter wandering around the house. He walks out, closing the door behind him. Myeon is left alone. She looks at the door through which her father just disappeared. When the conversation ends, Sung-hoon leaves the dining room. Myeon, sitting in the living room with a book, pretends to read. She sees his shadow in the doorway. He walks down the hallway toward his office, but not straight ahead. He suddenly stops at a large mirror, adjusting his tie. His eyes, reflected in the mirror, quickly scan the empty space behind him. Then he continues on, but at the library door, he turns inside, although he usually passes right by. Myeon waits 5 minutes, then leisurely walks to the kitchen for water. On the way, she glances into the library. It's empty. Sung-hoon has already left through another door. She spots him again in the hallway. He's talking to the security guard at the entrance, but his posture is unnatural. He's standing sideways, so he can see the guard, the stairs, and the hallway to the kitchen all at once. His eyes are constantly moving, scanning the space with quick, unnoticeable glances. This isn't ordinary vigilance. It's a test. He's looking for eyes that might be watching him. He's changing his usual routes to confuse potential surveillance. He acts like someone preparing for something secret and checking to make sure he's alone. Myeon retreats into the shadows of the stairs. Her heart skips a beat. Her father's theory is confirmed. Sung-hoon is up to something, and he's afraid of getting caught. After lunch, Sung-hoon announces he's going out on personal business. Daehyun glances at him briefly and simply waves his hand in agreement. Myeon acts quickly. She knows her father can't spy openly. She puts on a dark hooded jacket, headphones, and a backpack with a book. The look of a typical student. She leaves through the back door and walks to the nearest subway station. She knows Sung-hoon's license plate number. She waits for him in the parking lot of the shopping mall where he usually stops. 20 minutes later, his black sedan pulls out and merges into traffic. Myeon hails a taxi. Just follow that black car, but not too close, she tells the driver, trying to sound confident. They drive across the city. Sung-hoon doesn't go to his usual clubs or restaurants. He heads to an old industrial district where narrow streets are squeezed between the blank facades of warehouses. He parks on a side street. Myeon pays the driver 2 blocks away. She walks, ducking around corners and parked vans. Sung-hoon gets out of the car and looks around. He lights a cigarette, slowly scanning the windows of the houses opposite. Then he tosses away the half-smoked cigarette and enters a narrow, inconspicuous doorway between the auto parts store and a closed garage. A faded sign hangs above the door, Cafe Dawn. The windows are painted over with dark film. Myeon has never heard of this place, and Sung-hoon, a lover of expensive coffee shops with river views, is clearly a stranger here. Myeon waits for 5 minutes at the kiosk across the street, pretending to choose gum. Then she approaches the cafe door and quickly steps inside. The air smells of old oil and cigarette smoke, despite the ban. Inside, it's dimly lit. and soft blues music plays. An elderly bartender dozes behind the counter. There are only 3 tables. 2 are empty. Behind the third one, in the very corner, with his back to the wall, sits Sung-hoon. Opposite him is another man. Myeon, without stopping, walks to the far end of the counter, as if looking for the restroom. She sits down on a high stool facing the wall and pretends to look at her phone. In the angled mirror behind the counter, she sees the reflection of their table. The stranger is a man of about 50, with gray hair cut short at the temples. He has a heavy, square jaw and a habit of rubbing the edge of the table with his thumb. He is wearing an expensive but unfashionable suit. He speaks without smiling. His face is serious, businesslike. And suddenly, a memory clicked in Myeon's mind. She'd seen that face. Once, over a year ago, her father was receiving a guest in his study. She'd casually walked in to ask something. His expression is the same concentration he had yesterday at the office door. He nods. Just once. Business-like agreement. Myeon looks away from the mirror. Her fingers grow cold on the phone. She's just witnessed more than just a suspicious encounter. She's witnessed proof of infidelity. Myeon realizes it's too dangerous to sit at the counter. The bartender might notice her, or someone might walk in. She quietly slips off the stool and settles behind a tall shelf of old magazines standing between the counter and a corner table. From here, she can barely see anything, but she can hear better. She freezes, trying to breathe more quietly. The music drowns out the words, but when there's a pause between tracks, she hears snatches of them. Minho's voice, low and hoarse. Too much of a risk under these conditions. Sung-hoon's quiet but clear voice. Everything is calculated. He doesn't know anything. Even quieter, almost a whisper. Minho, we need guarantees. Not before, but after. Sung-hoon's voice again, this time with a hint of irritation. Afterwards, that's your part. I'll do my part. Tomorrow. The deadline. Myeon's heart is pounding so loudly, she thinks she can hear it behind the bookshelf. Tomorrow. What's supposed to happen tomorrow? She thinks back to last night. Sung-hoon's in his office. He's done something, or installed something. So, tomorrow is when it works? Or when she needs to finish what she started? She hears the sound of a porcelain cup being moved across the table. The clatter of a spoon against a saucer. His daughter, Minho suddenly says, and Myeon's blood runs cold. No witnesses. No accidents. She's a child, Sung-hoon snaps, but there's no defensiveness in his voice. There's a businesslike quality to it. She doesn't count. She can't see beyond her nose. Myeon clenches her fists, her nails digging into her palms. A child doesn't count. It doesn't matter. Cleanliness comes first, Minho insists. There's a sound like he's tapping his finger on the table. The envelope? You'll get the rest the day after tomorrow. And new instructions, Sung-hoon says briefly. Myeon hears chairs moving. They are getting ready to leave. She has seconds. She retreats deeper behind the shelf, pressing herself against the wall. She takes out her phone. She had turned off the sound and the flash back in the taxi. She turns on the camera. Sung-hoon and Minho stand up. They don't shake hands. Minho nods, turns, and walks toward the exit without looking back. Sung-hoon remains by the table for a moment. He picks up the same thin envelope from the table and quickly, in one motion, tucks it into the inside pocket of his jacket. At this moment, he stands almost in profile to her hiding place. His face is turned toward the exit, where Minho disappeared. There's neither joy nor anxiety on his face. There's a weary determination, that of a man who has made a difficult but necessary choice. Myeon picks up her phone. She takes 2 photos. The first is a wide shot of Sung-hoon in this dirty cafe at a table. The second is a closer shot of him hiding the envelope. The screen shows his hand near the slit in his jacket and the corner of the envelope. He turns to leave. Myeon immediately lowers her phone and presses her back against the wall, covering her face with her hood. She hears his footsteps. They pass the bookcase without slowing. The door opens and closes. She waits, counting to 30 at a rapid pace. Then she peers out cautiously. The cafe is empty. The bartender is dozing again. She steps outside. The air feels icy after the stale atmosphere inside. In the distance, she sees Sung-hoon's black sedan pull out of an alley. She walks in the opposite direction, toward a busy street where she can hail a ride. Her fingers clutch the phone in her pocket. It holds more than just suspicions now. It holds proof. She returns home long before dinner. Her father is in his study. She knocks and enters uninvited. Dae-hyun sits at the table. He looks at her. And from her face, from her wide eyes, he understands everything. He silently moves the keyboard aside, making room for her. Myeon places her phone on the table. Her fingers tremble. She opens the gallery and scrolls to 2 photos. Then she turns on the recorder and pauses the conversational snippets. She doesn't comment. She simply points to them and turns on the sound. Dae-hyun leans down. He looks at the first photo. His expression doesn't change. He studies the cafe's decor, Sung-hoon's posture. Then he switches to the second photo. Here, his gaze lingers longer. He sees the hand, the envelope, the assistant's expression. Then he listens to the recording. A quiet hiss, music in the background, and clear snatches. Risk. Guarantees. Tomorrow. His daughter. She doesn't count. When the recording ends, the room falls completely silent. Dahyun leans back in his chair. He looks not at the phone, but into the space in front of him. There's no anger on his face, no fury or disappointment. There's only a cold, crystal-clear understanding, like a chess player who's spotted his opponent's previously hidden combination and instantly understood its entire structure, all its implications. He nods slowly, as if confirming his worst suspicions. His eyes go blank, like lenses that have lost focus. He sees not the room, but patterns of betrayal, moving forces, cause and effect. He says finally, one word, a quiet, icy sentence. Now everything is clear. He takes Myeon's phone, connects it to his computer with a wire, and copies the files. His movements are automatic, precise. You're not doing anything anymore, he says, not looking at her. Forget about it. Act as usual. Sung-hoon mustn't suspect a thing. Not a single hint. He returns the phone to her. Go. And thank you. His gratitude sounds dry, like an official report. He's already left her. His thoughts are already there. In the tomorrow Sung-hoon mentioned, he's already plotting a countermove. And now he has everything he needs. The truth frozen on the screen turned out to be worse than he could have imagined. But now, it's his weapon. Dahyun does nothing. The evening passes as usual. He has dinner with Mi Yeon and asks about her plans for school. His demeanor is impeccable, calm, slightly detached, as always lately. Later, when Sung-hoon arrives with his evening report, Dahyun greets him with his usual reserved politeness. He even does something he's never done before, offers him brandy. Not the best bottle, but a simpler one. A gesture that speaks not of particular trust, but of relaxed formality. He listens to the transportation report, nods, asks a few clarifying questions. Everything is as usual, but now he looks at Sung-hoon with different eyes. He sees the slight tension at the corners of his mouth when he talks about next week's routes. He notices how his assistant's gaze lingers for a split second on the table, under which he hid something yesterday. Dahyun doesn't check. He doesn't hint. He gives Sung-hoon what he needs most now, a sense of security. The illusion that his secret visit has gone unnoticed, that his explanation has been accepted, that the plan is working. Sung-hoon's departure, Dahyun doesn't go to check the office. He calls on a phone that isn't used for regular conversations. He says only a few sentences. We need something. The one we talked about last time. Small, quiet, something that works autonomously. Yes, tomorrow morning. He hangs up. His plan is simple. He won't change anything. He won't look for anything. He'll let the mechanism of betrayal run its course, and then he'll take control. Early in the morning, while the house is still asleep, a nondescript gray van with a water delivery service logo pulls up to the service entrance. A young man in uniform steps out and carries 2 new bottles inside. The security guard, knowing the delivery schedule, simply nods. The young man takes the bottles to the utility room near the kitchen. 5 minutes later, he leaves. Dahyun comes down there. He passes a row of bottles and approaches one of the new ones. He unscrews the cap. Inside, on top of the water, lies a sealed plastic bag. He takes it out, puts it in his robe pocket, and leaves. In his bedroom, he opens the package. Inside, wrapped in soft cloth, lies a small black plastic rectangle about the size of a pack of chewing gum. On one end is a standard USB port, so it can be plugged into a wall outlet. On the other, a barely noticeable slot for a microphone. No lights, no buttons. The device looks like a cheap phone charger, one of thousands of which are available. It comes with a small remote control, similar to an alarm key fob. It's disposable. And now, perhaps, a strange eye or ear has taken up residence there. He stands up and begins a methodical, leisurely inspection. He doesn't fuss. He checks everything, but as if he's simply tidying up. He straightens the framed photo of his daughter on the shelf. He checks that the paintings are hanging straight. He runs his finger along the bottom edge of the table, along the backs of the drawers. He examines the books on the shelf, gently jiggling the spines. He peers behind the radiator by the window. His movements are calm, almost meditative. He searches not with his eyes, but with intuition. He tries to figure out where Sung-hoon himself would have placed the device, considering his time was short and the risk of being caught was high. 40 minutes later, he finds it, not right away, almost by accident. As he adjusts the heavy table lamp with the green shade, his fingers feel a small protrusion on its metal base, where it meets the stem. Not the factory one, a tiny, no bigger than a fingernail, smooth plastic housing, painted the same color as the lamp. A nearly invisible wire runs from it, disappearing into the lamp stem, to the power cord. Smart. The lamp is always on when someone is in the office. It provides perfect power. and it's right above the desk, in the epicenter of all conversations. Daehyun doesn't touch the find. He pulls his hand away. His face remains completely impassive. Now he knows. He returns to his desk. From his pocket, he takes out the same black charger. He stands and goes to the outlet by the bookcase, in the corner of the room furthest from the desk. The outlet is almost always free. He plugs the charger in. It looks like someone's forgotten headphone charger. Daehyun returns to the table. He takes the remote key fob from his pocket. He presses the single button. No sound, no confirmation. But somewhere in the city, on a remote server, or in a trusted receiver, everything said in this room is now being recorded. He puts the remote back in his pocket. His job is done. The room is ready. It's no longer just his office. It's a battlefield, and he's just set his traps there, letting his opponent think he still has the initiative. He leaves the office, leaving behind a silence in which two devices now sleep. One is the enemy's, the other is his. The game has truly begun. Daehyun takes action the next day. In the morning, he calls Sunghoon and Miyeon to the cafeteria. "I need to leave for a meeting urgently," he says, adjusting his cuff. "I'll be back this evening. Miyeon, you're coming with me. You need to pick out a new laptop downtown, and I'll be right there." Miyeon looks at him, hiding her surprise. They hadn't discussed buying a laptop, but she nods quickly. Sunghoon listens attentively, his face wearing his usual professional concentration. "Do you need an escort?" he asks. "No, you'll stay here. Expect a call from the boatyard. They need to confirm the details of the new vessel. Wait and call me back personally." Daehyun looks at him directly. "This is important. Stay in touch. It's the perfect trap." The assignment sounds urgent and significant. It demands Sunghoon's presence in the house and on the phone, but the very fact of a call from the shipyard is unpredictable. It could arrive in a minute, or it could take 3 hours. Sunghoon has a legitimate excuse to stay, and at the same time, a window of indefinite time, during which he'll be left to his own devices. Sunghoon boasts, "Got it! I'll be here." Half an hour later, Daehyun and Miyeon drive away in a black SUV. Miyeon glances in the side mirror. She sees Sunghoon standing by the front door, then slowly turns and walks inside. She looks at her father. He's driving, his face calm. "Are we really going to get the laptop?" she asks quietly. "Actually, we're going to the office on the other side of town, and we'll spend 3 hours there," he answers just as quietly. Give him some time. Silence falls in the house. The servants are in their wing. Guards are at their posts outside. Sunghoon is alone in the main building. He waits for 15 minutes. Then he goes up to his room on the second floor. A few minutes later, he comes out. He doesn't go to the living room or the library. He moves down the hallway toward Daehyun's office. This time, he doesn't stop at the mirror. He already checked the area yesterday and this morning. He's as sure he's alone. His steps are almost silent on the carpet. He approaches the door, stops, listens. Complete silence. His hand reaches for the handle. The movement is precise, swift. He turns it, pushes the door open, and steps inside, immediately closing it behind him. He doesn't turn on the light. The office is dimly lit, the curtains partially drawn. He stands for a second, letting his eyes adjust. Then he heads straight to the desk. He's not looking for anything. He's on a mission. His body remembers where and what to check. Sunghoon approaches the table. He bends down and runs his hand along the underside of the countertop where he set up the device yesterday. His fingers touch smooth plastic. Everything is in place. Nothing has come loose. He straightens up. He looks at the lamp. The device is powered by its network. He needs to make sure it's working. There's a test method he's been told about. He should lightly tap the base of the lamp and hear a quiet, high-pitched beep in response, almost inaudible to the human ear. This is a signal that it's working properly. He leans over again. He brings his ear to the metal base. He taps it lightly with his fingertip, once, twice. And at that moment, in the far corner of the room, near the bookcase, an almost imperceptible event occurs. A miniature vibration sensor activates in the black plastic charger plugged into the wall. It detects the faint vibrations of Sunghoon's tap on the table. This is its trigger. A microscopic relay quietly clicks inside the device. An invisible LED lights up, signaling activation. The digital microphone wakes from sleep mode. Recording begins. Sunghoon hears nothing. His own device doesn't beep. Perhaps there's a glitch. Perhaps he's just imagining it. He frowns and knocks again, louder, and in the socket, the device is already recording. It's recording the sound of his slaps on the table, his concentrated breathing, the squeak of his shoes on the floor. Sunghoon straightens up. He looks at the lamp with mild irritation. Then he shrugs. The device could have been delayed, or the beeping really was there and he didn't hear it. The main thing is that it's physically there. That means it should work. He takes one last look around, making sure nothing has been disturbed. Then he turns and leaves the office just as quickly and silently, closing the door. He leaves, confident that his plan is in place. He doesn't know that he has just with his own hands, triggered the device that will destroy him. The click in the silent office wasn't the beep of his transmitter. It was a trap sprung, and now the recording is in progress. Sung-hoon doesn't leave right away. He stands in the dimly lit office, assessing his work. His eyes have adjusted to the darkness. He sees the desk, the chair, the outline of the shelves. Everything is as it was. He runs his hand under the tabletop again, checking the device's fastening. The plastic housing fits snugly against the wood. There's no slack in the wire. Everything is secure. He thinks for a second. Tomorrow at the meeting, Park Min-ho will ask about proof of operation. He'll need a signal that the device is active and transmitting. Sung-hoon decides to add insurance. From his jacket pocket, he takes out a small metal object, resembling a thick paperclip. It's an antenna booster, invisible from the side. He carefully attaches it to the wire leading to the lamp stem. Now the transmission range will be more stable. He checks the connection with his fingers. Everything holds. His gaze falls on the table. His father's notebook and pen are lying on it. He doesn't touch them. He simply memorizes their position. If Dae-hyun suspects something and starts looking, the first thing he'll do is check to see if the things on the table have been disturbed. Sung-hoon steps away from the desk. He's only been here 4 minutes since he walked in. That's enough. The device is installed and upgraded. The test is complete. He can leave. He takes another look around the room. Nothing is broken. Nothing has moved. Perfect work. He turns and walks out silently, closing the door with the same quiet click. That evening, Dae-hyun returns to his office alone. He doesn't turn on the main light, only a small desk lamp in the corner. He sits down at his computer, but doesn't turn it on. He takes a small tablet and wireless headphones out of the safe. He connects to a secure channel. An interface appears on the tablet with a single button, Play Last Recording. He presses it. At first, there's silence in the headphones, then a clear soft sound, the click of a door opening. On the sounds of editing, he now has more than just suspicions. He has audio evidence that Sung-hoon didn't just walk into the office. He was there installing something, securing it, checking it, and he considered his work complete. Done. Dae-hyun saves the recording in several encrypted vaults. He turns off his tablet. He looks at the lamp on his desk. Now he knows exactly what's there, and he knows that whoever installed it has already marked the task as complete. Later, when the lights go out in the house, Dae-hyun enters Mi-yeon's room. She sits by the window and waits. He sits down in a chair. He looks at her. Well? He asks in one word. Mi-yeon folds her hands in her lap, her face serious. He left 20 minutes after you left. From his room. He went straight to the office. He entered quickly. She pauses, remembering the details. The time inside was 4 or 5 minutes. No more. He came out calmly, walked at a normal pace. He smiled. Dae-hyun nods slowly. Were you smiling? Yes. Not very much. Just the corner of his mouth. Like he was pleased. Then he went to the cafeteria, made himself a coffee, sat there looking at his phone. Everything looked normal. But that smile, she falls silent. This smile is enough. Okay, Dae-hyun says. Tomorrow will be a key day. He's waiting for confirmation from his new friends. And we'll wait for him. He stands up. His face in the darkness seems carved from stone. You did everything perfectly. Now rest. Tomorrow, everything needs to be as usual. He leaves. Mi-yeon remains by the window. She thinks about that smile, the smile of a man who has done his job and is waiting for a reward. She doesn't know that her father has already heard his voice on a recording, but she feels the clock ticking. And tomorrow, something must happen. The next day, Dae-hyun acts as if nothing has happened. He eats breakfast, reads reports, and takes a couple of phone calls. He sees Sung-hoon a few times. The assistant seems slightly agitated. His movements are a little more jerky. His eyes tend to look at his phone expectantly. He even allows himself a few insignificant jokes over breakfast, something he's never done before. Dae-hyun watches this. He sees the subtle, barely perceptible change. The traitor tastes victory. He thinks he's outsmarted his boss, that his device is working, transmitting secrets to competitors straight from the heart of the enemy camp. He relishes the illusion of safety. Mi-yeon notices it too. She sees Sung-hoon humming to himself as he walks down the hallway. He smiles at the guard at the door. He feels like a winner who hasn't yet received his prize, but is already certain of it. Dae-hyun does nothing. He lets this feeling take root. He gives Sung-hoon a day to get used to the idea of his success, to relax, to let his guard down. Every hour of Dae-hyun's inaction is another nail in Sung-hoon's coffin. The boss simply waits. He waits until the traitor's confidence reaches its peak. Only then will the blow be most effective. Late in the evening, when the house has already plunged into the silence of the night, Dae-hyun takes action. He calls Sung-hoon on the intercom. Just one ring. Sung-hoon picks up almost immediately. Boss? Come to the office, right now! Urgent matter! Daehyun says in a flat, colorless voice, and hangs up. He doesn't explain. He doesn't give time for questions, just orders. In his room, Sung-hoon pauses for a second. Urgent? In the evening? That's not Daehyun's style. A chill runs through his body, but then he remembers. The device is working. He checked. Perhaps it has something to do with the information they've already intercepted, or with tomorrow's meeting with Minho. He quickly straightens his jacket, swallows, and leaves. He climbs the stairs. The second-floor corridor is lit only by the night lights. The office door is slightly open, a narrow strip of yellow light streaming through the crack. It's usually closed. Sung-hoon stops in front of her. He takes a deep breath, composes himself. Then he knocks. "Come in!" Daehyun's voice comes from inside. Sung-hoon enters. The office is lit only by a desk lamp. "I was checking something too," he says, "checking what was actually going on in this office while I was gone." He leans over and presses a button on the speaker. Sounds come from the device. First silence, then the creaking of a door. Heavy, uneven breathing. Footsteps on the carpet. Sung-hoon freezes. His face begins to turn pale. The sounds continue. A rustling sound under the table. A metallic clank. The tap of a finger on plastic. And then, a voice. His own voice. Muffled but completely recognizable. "It should work. Contact!" Sung-hoon isn't breathing. His eyes are wide. Another rustle. A click. And again his voice. This time with a hint of satisfaction. "Done." The sound of footsteps. The click of a closing door. Daehyun presses the button, stopping the recording. A deathly silence falls over the office. It's heavier than any scream. Sung-hoon stands motionless. He stares at the speaker as if he's seeing a ghost. All his calm, all his confidence has evaporated. All that remains is pure silent terror. His plan, his victory, it was all an illusion, and he just heard that illusion shattered by the recording of his own voice. The sound of his own voice, captured and replayed in this room, hits Sung-hoon like a physical blow. The air seems to be torn from his lungs in a single, quiet, hissing exhalation. All his muscles, usually so composed and controlled, go limp for a moment before tensing again to the point of trembling. He turns pale, not gradually, but suddenly, as if the blood had drained from the surface of his skin, giving way to a waxy, grayish hue. His gaze, clear and ready for dialogue a second before, now darts. He looks at Daehyun, sitting in the shadows, trying to read anything in that motionless silhouette. Anger, disappointment, any emotion that would give him a foothold. But the boss's face is a mask, cold, polished, impenetrable. Then his eyes drifted down to the table. There, next to the speaker, lay a small, nondescript black object. A charger! The same one he'd seen here yesterday, plugged into the outlet by the bookcase. He'd noticed it out of the corner of his eye, his mind, busy with its mission, registering it as an insignificant detail of the decor, someone else's forgotten possession. He didn't attach any significance to it. Now he looks at her, and his mind builds a chain with terrifying clarity. It wasn't charging. It was his yawn, his mistake. While he was setting up his device under the table, another one was already working in the room. While he was checking the connection, his own words, his breathing, every rustle were already being recorded. He had fallen into a trap he hadn't even thought to look for, because he was sure he was a hunter. He looks at Daehyun again. His lips try to form a word, an excuse, a plea, but nothing comes out. Only a slight, telltale tremor at the corner of his mouth. His hands, hanging by his sides, curl into powerless fists, his nails digging into his palms. But even this pain seems distant, unable to break through the rising wave of panic. He stands in the center of the room, under the soft light of the lamp he now knows as part of his own betrayal. He's completely naked. All his carefully crafted plans, his negotiations with Minho, his careful actions, all of it has been reduced to dust with the press of a button on the speaker. He has nothing to say. Every word will now be a lie, already exposed. Every movement a confession. The silence in the office becomes palpable. It weighs on him, filling his ears with the roar of his own blood. He hears the ticking of the wall clock in the corner. Each click is the strike of a hammer, driving a nail into his future. He sees Daehyun's hand, motionless, lying on the table next to that very same device. That hand could do so much right now, but it just lies there, waiting. Sung-hoon tries to swallow, but his throat is dry. He wants to look away from Daehyun, but he can't. It's like looking into the eyes of a predator, poised to pounce, but only studying its prey. This silence and stillness contains a torture more exquisite than any scream. He's backed himself into a corner, and his boss is simply letting him know it. A moment of silence stretches into an eternity. Daehyun takes his time. He lets the silence do its work, finish him off, fueling the shame and fear to the breaking point. He watches every microscopic change on his former former assistant's face, the twitch of an eyelid, the bead of sweat that forms on his temple and slowly rolls down his cheek, the tension in his jaw muscles. Finally, Daehyun leans forward slightly, stepping out of the shadows. The lamplight falls on the lower part of his face, on his tightly pressed lips, on the firm outline of his chin. His eyes remain fixed on Sung-hoon, and he utters just one word, a quiet, even voice, devoid of any intonation, that cuts through the silence like a blade. Why? It's not a cry of devotion, not a demanding shout. It's the calm, almost clinical question of a researcher confronted with an inexplicable phenomenon. This word encapsulates the full weight of their long-standing relationship, all the trust they've placed in them, all the work they've done together. And it sounds like a death sentence to it all. The word hangs in the air, awaiting an answer that doesn't come. Sung-hoon flinches, as if he's been slapped. His eyes fill with unspoken agony. Why? This question contains all the others. For what? What were you missing? Who did you betray? He opens his mouth. The breath escapes his lips in a hoarse, broken sound. But it's not speech yet. It's the harbinger of collapse. He tries to gather his thoughts, which have scattered like shards of a mirror. He wants to say something about money, about pressure, about fear, about temptation. But all these explanations suddenly seem petty, pathetic, trivial, next to this simple, all-encompassing why. His voice sounds strange, creaky, as if he hasn't used it in a long time. They offered me, he falls silent, because even this is an attempt to shift the blame onto others. They offered, and he accepted. He made a choice. He looks at Daehyun and sees in his eyes not curiosity, but an expectation of a full confession, not excuses, but facts. The boss wants to hear the path of his downfall, from his first thought to the last click of the installed device. Sung-hoon lowers his head. He can't bear that gaze any longer. He looks down at his own shoes, at the dark carpet. His shoulders slump under an invisible weight. They knew about the debts, he finally begins, the words escaping with difficulty, a quiet, monotonous stream, as if he were reading out a report of his own defeat. Not mine. The nurses. Medical. Big ones. Minho contacted me 6 months ago. At first, just talk, then help, and then conditions appeared. He pauses, gulps in air. They wanted to know your plans for the port, container flows. I gave you general information, nothing critical, I thought. He shakes his head, not believing his own naivety. But they wanted more, constant access. The device was the next step, a guarantee from their side that I wouldn't back down. He looks up, and there's a look in his eyes that seems like a desperate attempt to explain, not justify. They weren't threatening me. Their sister, her clinic, her reputation. He falls silent. His confession, so pitiful and human at its core, debts, family, fear, sounds blasphemous in this office where iron logic and absolute loyalty reigned. He betrayed not out of greed for power, but out of weakness. And in Daehyun's world, that might have been even worse. Daehyun listened without interrupting. His expression didn't change. Now he knew why. But this knowledge changed nothing. The fact of betrayal didn't dissolve. It merely acquired a motivation. Understandable, almost banal, and therefore definitive. Sung-hoon's words, quiet and broken, hung in the air, filled with the scent of old wood and wax. He laid it all out, unvarnished. The story of how Park Minho, Daehyun's old enemy, had found his weakest spot. Not himself, but his sister, her husband, a doctor, had gotten involved in risky financial schemes and left behind not only debts, but also a shadow over her private clinic. The threat wasn't violence, but quiet, bureaucratic destruction, inspections, license revocation, public scandal. Minho offered a solution, and then conditions. At first, just information, nothing special, then more, and then a demand to install the device. In exchange, not only debt relief and protection for the clinic, but a place in the new structure. Once Daehyun's old guard was pushed aside, Sung-hoon was envisioned a future where he wasn't a right-hand man, but an independent leader. And he, cornered by debt and fear for his family, allowed himself to be convinced. He thought he was being cunning, balancing on the edge, in control. He believed his plan was his shield. I thought I could stop when her problems were solved, he whispered, staring into space, that I was simply taking resources from them and giving back only what wouldn't truly harm you. They said you were too conservative, that it was time to move on, and that they just wanted parity. His voice broke. He himself heard the childish naivety of his excuses. He, an experienced man with a proven track record, had allowed himself to be duped by flattery and false guarantees. He had betrayed not at gunpoint, but under the sweet whispers of promises and the tickle of fear. They said that after the device was installed, I'd receive the final payment and the clinic's papers. That's it. And then I could supposedly discover the wiretap myself, strengthening my position here. I thought I was playing their game, but I'm playing my own. A bitter smile twisted his face. I was blind. He fell silent, the fire of his confession exhausted. Now only the fact remained in the room. He, Lee Sung-hoon, had become an enemy agent in the very heart of Kim Dae-hyun's household, and he had been exposed not as a result of a lengthy investigation, but by chance, the attentiveness of a teenage girl. This irony was the bitterest of all medicines. Dae-hyun listened without moving, his face a stony mask. When Sung-hoon fell silent, silence fell once more, this time heavy with the truth being spoken. Dae-hyun rose slowly from the table. He didn't approach Sung-hoon. He walked past him to the window, pulled back the heavy curtain, and looked out into the blackness of the garden, at his own reflection in the glass. They won't give you any money or documents, he said finally, his voice as even and dispassionate as a narrator's text. As soon as they get the first significant data from the device, you'll become useless. An extra link, a hereditary witness. Your sister and her clinic are the most convenient lever. They'll put pressure on you again and again until they've sucked everything they can. And then they'll get rid of you. You. And probably her too. So as not to leave any loose ends. He turned, his back to the window, his figure a dark silhouette against the faint light from the garden. You thought you were entering their world on your own terms. But in their world, there's only one role for someone like you. Expendable. You betrayed your home, thinking you'd be given the keys to someone else's. But they don't build other people's homes for traitors. They dig holes in them for them. Sung-hoon stood with his head bowed. Every word Dae-hyun said struck home, confirming his deepest, most subconscious fears. He hadn't just made a mistake. He had signed his own and his sister's death warrant by trusting the executioners. What are you going to do? He breathed out, without looking up. Dae-hyun slowly returned to the table. He sat down, picked up the same black device, the charger, and twirled it in his fingers. I'm not going to do anything to you, he said, and for the first time his voice sounded not icy silence, but a heavy, final weariness. You've already done everything to yourself. He put the device back. Tomorrow morning, you'll write a letter of resignation due to health reasons, family circumstances. You'll receive your full pension, accumulated over all the years. No one will hear from me about your real reasons. To everyone here, you will remain L and Sung-hoon, a loyal assistant struck down by a family illness. Sung-hoon raised his head, a spark of incredible, painful hope blazing in his eyes. Mercy? Spare? But Dae-hyun immediately put it out. You'll leave. Far away. Anywhere. But know this. Your name in this city, in this business, will be erased. Forever. Not a single door you knew will open for you again. Not a single phone will answer. You'll become a ghost. You thought you were playing a big game, Sung-hoon. Now you won't have a game at all. You'll simply live with what you've done. Every day. With the thought that your sister owes her salvation not to your cunning, but to my indulgence. And with the understanding that if you ever open your mouth or try to contact someone from the past, or even show your face on the horizon, this fragile security will crumble. And this time, I will not interfere. He paused, letting each word sink in. You wanted independence? Now you have it. Complete, and the full price for it. You will be free from my rules, and from the protection of my walls. Alone, with what you have left. This is your true price. Live with it. Dae-hyun leaned back in his chair. The conversation was over. He hadn't raised his voice once. He hadn't made a single threatening gesture, but the sentence he'd pronounced was more terrible than any reprisal. It didn't take a life. It took an identity, a reputation, a belonging. It left a void that would have to be filled with long years of silence and solitude. It was a lesson taught not by anger, but by the cold, merciless logic of consequences, and Sung-hoon understood it without a word. The next morning, the house awoke as usual, but the silence within was different. Mi-yeon entered the kitchen earlier than usual. She sat at the table by the large window overlooking the garden. A cup of half-finished tea stood before her, steam rising in a thin stream and evaporating in the cool air. She looked at the familiar sight, neat paths, pine trees, a fountain that hadn't been turned on yet. Everything was the same as yesterday, the day before, a month ago. But her eyes saw differently now. She saw more than just a garden. She saw the perimeter. She saw the shadow of the high fence, the angle of the cameras on the lampposts. She automatically noted that the guard at the east gate was standing at his post, but his posture was a little more collected than usual. She lifted the cup to her lips. The tea was the same brand as always, but the taste seemed flat, as if all the nuances had vanished with the previous evening. She heard no noise from the staff quarters on the other side of the house. Usually at this time, there would be muffled voices, the clatter of dishes, and footsteps. Today, there was only silence, deaf, wary. The door to the dining room opened, and the elderly housekeeper, Mrs. Kim, entered. She carried a tray of fresh fruit. Her face, usually kind and calm, was stern, her eyes downcast. She silently placed the tray on the table, nodded to Myeon, and left just as silently. Not a word, not the usual question. How did you sleep? Everyone knew, or guessed, and they were afraid to say anything extra. Myeon took the apple but didn't eat it. She simply turned it over in her hands, feeling the smooth, cool skin. Her thoughts were up there, in her father's study, and in the empty room, in the left wing, the door to which was now locked. Daehyun stood in his office. He looked out the window at the same garden as his daughter, but his gaze was directed inward, at the room's reflection in the glass. On the table in front of him lay two objects. The first was the same black charger. The second was the small, elegant, spider-like casing of the device the security specialist had removed from under his desk the night before. Both devices were dead. The batteries had been removed, the microchips physically destroyed. He felt neither anger nor triumph. There was only a cold, clear emptiness, like after a complex surgery, when the tumor has been removed, but the body is weakened and vulnerable. He thought about Sung-hoon. At 5 a.m, that man was no longer in the house. He'd left through the back door with one suitcase. He'd been taken to a distant train station. Where he went was unimportant. What mattered was that he was no longer here. His story in this house had ended quietly, as it had begun so many years ago, but the aftertaste from that story would remain forever, a scar on trust that would never fully heal. Daehyun turned from the window. His gaze fell on the chair by the table where Sung-hoon always sat during reports. It stood slightly to the side, unmoved since the previous evening. Daehyun walked over, grabbed the backrest, and with a precise, powerful movement, placed it in its usual spot, right next to the edge of the table. The furniture fell into place. The people, however, did not. He sat down in his chair. He turned on the computer. The usual work windows lit up on the screen. Logistics, finance, reports. The world went on. The threat had been neutralized, but the rules of the game had changed. He knew he had to be doubly careful now, that he could only trust the system, not people. That his daughter, having accidentally found herself at the epicenter, would no longer be able to view this world with her former naive eyes. He had unwittingly drawn her in, and now he had to think about how to protect her in this new, harsher world, the boundaries of which she had only just learned. He made the first call. His voice was businesslike, calm. Yes, it's me. Schedule a security audit of the entire perimeter and the interior, a full one, next week. And find an acoustic scanning specialist. Yes, full time. He hung up. Work continued. The house stood still. The silence outside was deceptive. Vigilance had now settled permanently within him, cold, intelligent, and restless. He had lost his right arm, but he had survived. And now his grip would become stronger. Downstairs, Myeon finally sipped her tea. It was almost cold. She set the cup down on the saucer. The sound was soft, but in the new silence it rang out clearly, like a period at the end of a long and terrible chapter. She stood, walked to the window, and looked up at her father's study. She knew he was there, and she knew that from this day on, they would both bear the burden of this knowledge, of how easily loyalty crumbles, and the price one must pay to restore it. The silence wasn't peace, it was memory, and a promise that such a mistake would never be repeated. Never.